Okay, well, welcome everybody. I'm so excited that you're here with me, and let me know if the volume's working for you. You can hear me clearly, and just put in the chat, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. All right, wonderful. So the way that we have this set up is different than we have our meeting rooms, because this way you only see me. We are not distracted with background noise, and we keep the focus on the painting. And if you are an absolute beginner, if you just or intermediate, or you don't want to put that pressure on yourself to try to create something um, fabulous, each workshop, first of all, each workshop really is about learning. And don't put those expectations on yourself if you don't create a great masterpiece or anything like that. Really, what it is about applying the techniques that you're learning right now into just a shape, into a form. And that's why we have the line drawing. And then you use those techniques later and apply it into your own paintings or at your own pace later. Then you'll have a better idea of how to approach it. In one of my last classes, somebody asked me, do you need to get the number 30 brush? You don't need to get the number 30 brush. It's just what I use. And why I use the number 30 is because I want to soften areas and I want more control over the amount of water it delivers. Either I want not a lot of water, or I want a certain spring in my brush, or I want to soften an edge. If I use a mop or something that's going to hold more water, these are softer than this. Then it's a little bit, I don't do it, I don't use this, but it will be more of a challenge to soften that edge because you're going to have a tendency to release too much water. So that just comes with practice. The other thing you can use is a number 20 sable synthetic blend. And you could probably even use a synthetic, but with the synthetic blend, then it has a nice water holding ability, and then you can release the water a little bit easier with the amount of pressure on the brush. Now, I cover this in that section just underneath the choosing your color within the course. So let's get your brushes wet here. Let's get your stuff. Hopefully you have it ready, and hopefully you have a piece of scrap paper. And why I thought we would start off this way is that way you can test your colors first so you become familiar with it. And let's create just some simple shapes. It doesn't have to be accurate. If you have scrap paper here or the back of a painting, use that. And let's just create a shape. I'm warming you up. That's all this is. Okay, this is not showing up very well. Just something, it could be even a triangle, but make it a little more fun and graceful. And maybe another one over there. I'm not paying too much attention. Why I want you to do this is we're going to work with the water to color ratio in the palette, and I want you to try to retain a highlight. And since we're going to be working on something that's smaller like this is the quarter sheet of paper. What I would probably do instead of the Hake brush or the other one is use my number 30. And when you hear me say like a number 20 brush in the lesson, you can go down to a number 14. We're just going to try to find the right size brush that feels appropriate for the area and the size of the shape that we're working in. You're going to see that I also brought in some synthetic brushes. And the reason why I would bring in synthetic brushes is I don't want that to release too much water. And then I would control a shape, or it just doesn't take off on me. It's not going to be too wet and too sloppy in an area. Okay, looking at the size shape that I'm working on in this area. Now, we don't have to do a lot of petals. Even if you do one, that's great. Just warm up. I'm going to take my number 20 here, and I'm going to make a little puddle in my palette. And I'm going to take a little cobalt blue. And if you have a Winsor Violet Dioxazine, you can use that too. Or you can use a different blue. We're just going to mingle our colors together and see what you like. I'm bringing in a little quinacridone magenta. I'm using the Winsor and Newton quinacridone magenta. If you're using the Daniel Smith brand, you may want to use a quinacridone pink, or you may want to use a permanent rose. Okay, so I'll just test it, see if I like that. This is going to be your sheet that you can return to later. Okay, and if you add more color, then it gets darker. We're just warming up. There is no right or wrong here. Okay, and when I look at this puddle, you can see it doesn't have a lot of water, but it has quite a bit of water in there. It has a good color strength in there. But thinking about the shape that I'm working on, do I need more color? Do I need to make a bigger puddle? So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay, something like that. And that's pretty thick. I don't, I want a little more water in there, but these are the things that I'm just thinking about. For this size shape, I'm going to take my number 30, or you could take a hockey, whatever you have, a brush that's going to hold a lot of water. Now I'm going to get water on my brush, and I'm just going to fill this shape in almost up to the pencil line. I'm going to keep this very easy. Okay, I want enough water, and depending on the area that you're in, it might be really dry, so you might want to have a lighter touch to release more water. Now I'd like to have color more on this side, so I'm going to take the brush that has the color, and with this one, I'm going to go along the pencil line. Now I don't want everything to just stay that way, so I might wiggle it a little bit, and I might have a bit too much water on there. I'm not quite sure yet. We'll see. Then I'm going to use the water on the surface to carry the color and use it to my advantage. But if I just go back and forth, then I'm filling everything in. I'm going to take my 30, remove some of the extra water, just like this. And I want to try to control the amount of water just a little bit better. What I'm going to do now is take a number 14, dip that in my brush. Sorry, I'm trying to pay attention. I have something upside down. So I tried to do that upside down and talk and see if the mic's working at the same time. Okay, I'm going to go on this side, right along this pencil line. Also notice how I try to have more of a flowing stroke to that. Up here, I missed water, so what I'm going to do is then take my number 30, remove the extra water. I don't want to release more water. And then I'm just going to take that color and go along that edge. Okay, and if it's too much like a line, maybe I'll just touch it and see what I did here. I went like that and removed the extra color there. And then I'm going to move it around. If I go back and forth, then it all gets filled in. I want to try to control this highlight. We're going to do a lot of this. So if you can practice this for just a few minutes, try that. And you could even experiment with a different type of brush if you want, and do another one. So this way, you're going to get your color ready, the colors that you like, and you're getting just a little bit of practice. Now, when you want to make a large puddle of color, use a large size brush. You can't get a big puddle of color if you're using a tiny brush. If I want less color on this side, here I'm using a 14. We're just practicing. And if I want the illusion of veins in there, or not really veins, but more shape, then I might consider using an 8 or a synthetic brush and do this. I really just want you to practice sweeping your strokes and playing with the water. This is not a masterpiece. Then I'll take the 30, remove the extra water. What this will help help you with is avoiding blooms and having a bit more control. And if it starts to feather, I might go along this edge and just soften. We're going to do a lot of this. So this sheet is where you're going to write down the colors that you're using. And next, we're going to go into the shadows. We're just going to get the general essence of that, and then we will move into the meeting room in a little bit, but we're going to go through the shadows and going deeper into the flower and light next dark and background and then getting bolder and then the final details. So we still have a lot to cover. Like it, but what I saw is a lot of people went too dark too fast with it and then overpowered the painting. So let's move that over. And even if, like, if you take too much time, and we're not talking a lot of time, then it starts to stain and it doesn't want to move. So let's say it doesn't want to move. Okay, you're trying to get that nice soft line there. What you could do is you could actually wiggle your brush and encourage it to move. It'll bring a little more water into that. Will that help? Is that part of the problem or?
Yeah, I'll play around with that, see if that helps.
Okay, no, it was a really good comment. Thanks. But again, if it was a longer workshop, then we go more in depth. And I'm trying to
Okay.
fit in what we can do in this period of time. I was going to have a darker background in here. That was my initial reaction for this particular painting. And by having it dark, if I go dark in my shadow, then I'm going to lose everything. And the same thing over
True.
here. Then we're not going to have anything that stands out.
True.
So that's why I left that space and then just basically tinted that. I didn't mind if that area bled in a little bit. So really what I'm trying to do is break it up into littler shapes so it looks more complex.
Yeah.
And that was my thought on it. Like even if I look at the reference photo, this kind of all bleeds together. It's more of a light
Right.
medium tone. But then thinking about, again, my intention was having a darker background. I may do something else with the one I'm working on, maybe yes, maybe no. But with that dark background, wanting to have this flower pull forward, I want this highlight there. Otherwise, if I have everything that color, it's going to be flat and it's going to die into the
Got
background.
it.
Yeah. I'm going to let that dry and then I'm going to glaze over that again. Now this is still damp. And I'm also looking at my flower thinking now is the time I would need to come back in and add more color in the flower, but I'm going to continue with the background. This is still damp. This is wet. This is wet. So I'm going to go ahead and dry this because now I'm finally feeling maybe it's time to just glaze over everything. Why I think this is important is because you may want to not have this kind of background. Maybe you want to leave it on white, or maybe you want to have a lighter green or be more thoughtful about what you do with the background. One thing I do want you to think about is if you add a lot of foliage in the background or leaves and you have it wet on dry with crisp edges, that has the potential of competing with your flower. So my intention for this painting was to have the flower stand out and the background fall back. Now, when I did this background, I do think that I could probably go over it again. And I mean, I really did like the brighter greens. I thought that was wonderful, but my motive was different for what I wanted here. And I think that the part of the background could get pushed back even more. So I may consider doing that, but for the workshop, this is what I wanted to do. And soften. All right. Let's see, get out of that. That was a big project for, I mean, really, for this amount of time. I think it's a huge project. So I hope you all had a wonderful time doing this today. We have 10 minutes left, but we're going to take that time to gradually move over into the other room. And I want to ask you if there's any, do you have any questions? Is there anything that you want to ask me before we go? And thank you, Denise. I really appreciate that. And if you would like to say something, raise your hand or, use the little thing or just go, yeah, I want to say something. Hope you join us in the meeting room. And then you can show me whatever hot mess your painting is, or, if it's perfect, that's great. But we can always take a look at it. And then I can tell you whether or not your brushes aren't holding enough water, if your paper isn't working for you, if it's the sizing isn't working for you. That's what we use that for. And we'll just do that for about maybe 30 minutes, half hour. I think we're good. So I'm going to head over there. Thank you, everybody. I'll get out of this room. Let's head over there and use the same link.